We've been looking at the life of Joseph, and last week we finally got poor Joseph out of trouble for after so long. Here's Joseph at the age of 17 being sold into slavery in Egypt. And God makes that better, only for him to then end up being tossed in jail. And, he's a couple of years, he's in jail. We don't exactly know how long he's in jail. But at the point in time that he looks like he's got some possibility of getting out of jail because of interpreting the dream of the butler, who then is restored to the king's court, the Pharaoh. He tells him, when you get there, talk to the Pharaoh and tell him I shouldn't have been here in the first place. And the guy forgets. And so it's another 2 years before he ever has that opportunity. And what then prompted it was the Pharaoh having a couple of really strange dreams, and then the butler remembering that Joseph interpreted dreams, and now Joseph being called to appear before the Pharaoh to interpret his dream. And those dreams were significant. They were prophetic dreams. And it was God showing them and warning them that a great famine was going to be coming. That first there would be 7 years of great abundance, but then they would be followed by 7 years of great famine. So much so that all of the abundance wouldn't even be remembered by people because of the famine, unless they took measures to prepare for it. And God tells Joseph exactly not only that the dream means these two dreams, but how much they should set aside in the years of abundance so that they're prepared. And they are to set aside 1/5 of the abundance of the harvest so that they don't starve during the famine. And Pharaoh ends up appointing Joseph to be the guy in charge of seeing to all of that. And that's what we'll pick up again now in Genesis chapter 41, where Joseph has just been chosen by Pharaoh to do that. And, it's not just like that. That in itself would be great. It would be nice if, okay, Joseph, you don't have to go back to jail. We're going to make you the Secretary of Agriculture and Finance here. And, that would be a good job, and that would be great to not be in jail doing that. But it's much more than that. It's much more than that happens to Joseph. He's promoted to be the second in command in all of Egypt. That only the Pharaoh himself has greater authority than Joseph. And he's given, this fancy chariot, the BMW of chariots, and he's given the, signet ring and the fancy clothes and, the entourage, the whole works. He's got all of it because Joseph is the man now. So in Genesis 41, verse 44, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee, without you, Joseph, shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Nobody makes a move in Egypt unless you give the okay. That's the deal. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paaneah, because Joseph was a silly name and much too hard to say. And he gave him to wife Asnath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 30 years old. So 13 long years before this happens for Joseph. And yet, 30 is that age where in that culture of that time, it wasn't until 30 that you were really considered an adult. So, Joseph's really come into his own in many ways here. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls, meaning, great abundance. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, The food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And that's obviously a figure of speech, because how can you set aside a fifth of it if you can't count it, right? But it shows the abundance of it, that there was so much corn that you could, you couldn't even count it, so much. Verse 50. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil in all my father's house. He's so blessed now that he said God just made him forget all the hard times. All the hard times, everything bad that happened. Couldn't even remember it because things were so good now. Verse 52. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. That's what that name meant. God had caused him to be fruitful in a land that he was brought to under such terrible situation, such a bad thing. Verse 53. And the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth, of famine, began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. Everybody's got no food except in Egypt. Because that famine was so bad, every place else, they had nothing to eat. But because of what God told Joseph to do, and Joseph walking with God, and what a difference that made. One man, think about that. One man in whom the Spirit of God was, as the chapter's called. One man that walked with God made all the difference for that whole region of the world, for Egypt itself. Because had it not been that, they would have been starving to death. And for all the peoples around, because that famine wasn't just there in Egypt, but that entire part. But one man walked with God, and because of that, everybody was able to weather that storm, weather that famine. Verse 55. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith do you do? Don't talk to me, talk to Joseph. He's the guy put in charge of this stuff. And whatever he tells you to do, then that's what you should do. Verse 56. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and gave away to everybody all the... Oh, he didn't? He didn't? No, he didn't. He didn't. He sold unto them. He sold to them, Wasn't like our country where we somehow feel like we should pay top dollar for the oil and everything anybody else has that we really need, but we should give them all the food and whatever, they want. And he sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. Everybody comes in. And they come in with their gold, with their silver, with their jewels, with whatever they had. It's interesting on a couple of levels. One is this is so much of what contributes to the wealth and the power of Egypt that is recorded in history as one of the greatest civilizations in the ancient world. And so much of why they ever got to be that way in the first place was because of what occurs in this situation. It's also interesting when you follow through the history of Israel, because 400 years from now, they're going to be leaving Egypt. You'll see as we get, eventually we'll get to this, that they all come in, the family comes, and eventually that family turns into a nation of people. And 400 years when they leave, God says, okay, on your way out, take everything that was brought in to Egypt because of Joseph. Take the jewels, take the gold. It doesn't belong to them rightfully. It belongs to you guys, so take it when you leave.
Wow.
But that's why it wasn't stealing for them to take it. The reason it was ever there in the first place was because of God telling Joseph, this is what to do. Chapter 42. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, this is Jacob, okay? Remember Joseph's father, Jacob. He said unto his sons, why do you look one upon another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. So there they are, they're hungry, and he says, why are you guys just sitting around looking at each other? Get up off your butts and go to Egypt and buy some food. There's food in Egypt. Verse 3, and Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. So Benjamin is the youngest of Jacob's sons. And he's the only one that is a full brother to Joseph. It's Benjamin and Joseph that come from Rachel. And he's the youngest, and Jacob's not taking any chances with him. He said, the rest of you guys go, but I lost Joseph. I'm not losing Benjamin. He's staying here. Verse 5, and the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land, all the land of Canaan. Everybody's coming from all over. And Joseph was the governor over the land. And he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Does that sound familiar? That was the dream, right? Yes. That's what they were so indignant about, that Joseph told them that this was going to happen, that they sold him into slavery in the first place. First thought about killing him. But there they are, coming in and bowing themselves down. Now, that bowing down was done as a sign of respect. And, you know, I think still with kings, at least most of them, you better still bow. They won't have your head nowadays, most of them. But, you know, there was a time where that was, you know, absolutely you had to do that. And in the East, they would do this. They would bow down as a sign of respect. And because Joseph's put in that kind of position of authority, they're bowing down to him. But that bowing that they're doing isn't the only kind of bowing that they really have to do. Because bowing is a sign of humility, and they're carrying through the action, but they're not really humble yet. They're not really bowing down in humility to Joseph like they will after Joseph gets done with them. And, you know, you read the record as we're going to get into it, you're going to see that Joseph takes care of his family, but he messes with them for a bit here. And it's not just for the fun of it. It's not just, well, now's my chance and the shoe's on the other foot and let me put these guys through some paces. It's because they need to get to that point. They need to be humble. They need to recognize that Joseph, that they did this to, is now in authority, and the things that he told them were from God, and that God had a plan behind all of this, and that's what we'll get to eventually. Verse 7, and Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them. He recognizes these guys right off the bat. but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? So he doesn't make himself known to them. And if you've ever seen basically the way that people in Egyptian royalty adorned themselves, that was not hard to do, to disguise himself so that they wouldn't recognize him. Besides the fact that he was only 17 and now he's 30. But, you know, he looks like an Egyptian. He doesn't look like the little boy Joseph, the teenage kid that they sold into slavery anymore. And he speaks roughly to them. You know, he acts like he doesn't know them. He's like, what are you here for? And they said that they're from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them. He remembers exactly. And when they're there and they're bowing to him, he's very aware that this is exactly what God had showed him, and that this is beginning to fulfill what God had prepared. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed, and he said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. Oh, I know why you're here. You're not here just to buy corn. You're from some other country, and you're here to see how we're doing and to spy us out. Figure out how you can steal our stuff or something. Verse 10, and they said unto him, Nay, my Lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. No, we're not spies. We're just hungry. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. Verse 12. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. You're trying to look for our weaknesses. You're trying to see where we might be weak and how you could attack us at this time. Verse 13. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. Well, he knew better than them what that one that they said is not was. And Joseph said unto them, That is it that I spake unto you, saying ye are spies. No. I still think you're spies. Hereby ye shall be proved, verse 15. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. You're not leaving until your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. If I don't see that youngest brother to prove that what your story holds up, then I'm just going to say you're spies, and we'll just leave you in jail. And he put them all together into ward 3 days, tosses them into jail for 3 days. And Joseph said unto them, verse 18, said unto them the third day, This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses. But bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. So I'll give you a break. I won't keep you all here and just send one. Instead, I'll just keep one, and the rest of you can go home. I'm giving you lots of food to take home to your family, to your father. Probably figured one couldn't take enough to take care of all of them. So you go home, but bring back the youngest. Verse 21. And they said one to another, We are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. See, now they're beginning to think, you know what? This bad stuff's happening because we did something really wrong. You know, what we gave out, we're getting back here. We did a terrible thing when we did not have any pity on our brother, when we for no reason did all that to him, and that's why all this bad stuff's happening to us now. Verse 22. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and you would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. I told you guys not to do this. Remember, Reuben was the one who said, don't do this. And now he's saying, I told you so. Verse 23, and they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. So they're speaking in Aramaic, and they don't realize that Joseph understands Aramaic because he's just speaking Egyptian and using an interpreter, so they don't catch on. Verse 24, and he turned himself about from them and did what? Wept. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, again, it just shows you the heart of Joseph. What would most people probably wouldn't weep. Some would say, you know what? Hey, I'm that guy that you're talking about. Guess what? I'm that guy, and now it's my turn to put you in slavery. I'm going to find the worst 10 households in all of Egypt, and that's where you're going to be. And then after we do that for a while, I'll throw you in prison for a while, and then you can see how I felt. Would he have been justified in doing that? Yeah. Would that have been fair? Do you want to be fair? That would have been fair, right? That would have been fair. But that's not what Joseph does. Because Joseph has compassion. Because Joseph's willing to forgive. If he wasn't willing to forgive, if he wasn't willing to be bigger than that situation, what would happen to his family? They would have just starved to death. They would have died off. They would have starved to death. What would that mean to us? That would mean to us that none of us are saved, because it's from that family that comes Jesus Christ. It's from that bloodline. And if it wasn't for what God did here with Joseph, and if it wasn't for Joseph being such a wonderful man, not just walking with God so powerfully, but being so kind and forgiving, then that bloodline of Jesus Christ never would have continued. It would have ended with Judah. He would have starved to death, and none of us would have ever been redeemed. That's what's at stake in this whole situation. Joseph cries. Verse 24, and he returned to them again and communed with them, and took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. That's the one that he's going to have stay. Then Joseph commanded to fill the sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provision for the way. And thus did he unto them. So he fills their sacks with corn, he gives them all the food, and he sneaks their money back into the sacks so they don't even have to pay for it, and sends them on their way. And they laded their asses with the corn and departed thence. Got their asses out of there. Verse 27. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender and give him some food in the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in the sack's mouth. He opens up the sack to feed his animal, and there's the money. And he said unto his brethren, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, what is this that God hath done unto us? Now we're in for it. And they came unto Joseph, their father, unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly unto us. He was not nice. He was kind of rude guy. And took us for spies of the country. He accused us of having other motives. And then he goes through the whole story. They just rehearsed to him what we read, so we'll skip down. But the reason why they're freaking out is they think when we go back, with our brother, to get the other brother out of here, then they're going to think that we stole that money back. And now we're all going to be in big trouble. Let's skip down to chapter 43. So they tell Jacob the whole story, and Jacob says, what, now I'm supposed to send Benjamin to go back there? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose him. But in chapter 43, a little time has passed, and they're all starting to get pretty hungry because what they brought back wasn't enough to keep them going for very long. Verse 1. And the famine was sore in the land, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, Go again, buy us a little food. You're going to have to go back. And Judah spake unto him, saying, The man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, Ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. We won't be able to buy any food unless we take Benjamin with us. If thou wilt send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy the food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, You won't see my face, except your brother's with you. And Israel said, Wherefore deal ye so ill with me as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? Why were you so darn stupid that you even told him that you had another brother in the first place, and now you've put me in this situation? Verse 7. And they said, The man asked us straightly of our state and of our kindred, saying, Is your father yet alive? Have ye yet another brother? It's like he knew us. It's like he knew everything about us. And we told him according to the tenor of these words. Could we certainly know that he would say, Bring your brother here? We didn't know he'd do this to us. And Judah said unto Israel his father, Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou, and also our little ones. We got to do something. If we stay here, we're all just going to starve to death. Verse 9, I will be surety for him. I'll be collateral. I'll be the collateral for Benjamin. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee, and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. For except we had lingered, surely now we had returned the second time. If we had done this in the first place, we'd already be back with more food. And their father Israel said unto them, If it must be so now, do this. Take the best fruits in the land of your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm, a little honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, almonds. Take double the money in your hand, and the money that was brought again to the mouth of your sacks. Carry again in your hand, perhaps if it was an oversight, Bring back more money and pay him twice. Take also your brother, arise, and go again unto the man. And God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. If this doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But we're just going to die if we don't do something. And Judah, it's interesting, is the one that says, I will be the one to stand in the place, because it's out of Judah's line that Jesus Christ comes. It's out of the tribe of Judah that the Messiah comes. And there's Judah, who's the one who is very symbolically saying, I will save my whole nation. And we'll have to read about more of that the next time.